Hello friends and welcome to Into Fly Fishing. Today we're here to talk about the 10 best rivers in the US to pursue trout on the fly. So let's get going. Hello friends and thank you so much for being here. I'm Nick Jovanovich and this is Into Fly Fishing. We're here on a sweaty August afternoon in Idaho, oh man, to talk about the 10 best rivers to fly fish for trout in the United States. Now, this is inherently a subjective list. There's a lot of reduction that needs to go on in order to put something like this together. And we needed to put together a list of criteria for these rivers to meet to be added to this list. Once we did that, there was a lot of rivers there that we needed to kind of weed away to get down to 10. It's not an easy task. You might disagree with some of the things I'm saying here, and that's okay, but we're gonna do this anyway, and I think we've got a pretty good list here for you. Now, a little bit about me before we get going. I have been a fly fishing guide for the last 15 years in Southwest Montana. It gives me a great perspective on different rivers, different waterways, reviewing gear, seeing how people pick up the sport and learn differently than I do, people who get to use the same gear as me and use it a different way. It's a really great way to get a rounded perspective on this sport that we love so much. I have been fly fishing for the last 35 years or so. I started when I was in my single digits, way back in the late 80s and early 90s in central Montana. So I've had a lot of experience with these kinds of things. I've done a lot of traveling, and I think that'll lend a good perspective on the subject at hand. So what were some of the criteria that we used to put this list together? Well, number one is access. You need some good public access to these waters so that the regular fisherman, the regular Jane, the regular Joe can get in there and do some fishing. And that's not to say limited to just walk-in access. I think a good trout stream has great float access and access on foot. Criteria number two, lots of fish. That's an easy one to put on the list, of course. A high fish count is crucial for putting a river on this list, and of course calling it one of the 10 best places to fly fish in the US. Number three, a variety of techniques. Now, I like to go to a place where I can employ a nymph technique, a streamer technique, or an indicator technique if I so choose. And of course, the data is going to determine what I use more or exclusively, but I think that a good fly fishing river, something that needs to be on this list, is going to be approachable in most, if not all, aspects or disciplines of fly fishing. And of course, that leads into point number four, and that is good dry fly fishing. The epitome, the almost soul of the sport, why we started doing this in the first place, was to throw floaty bugs on top of the water and watch a fish come up and grab it. So good dry fly fishing is definitely a big part of why we chose the rivers that we did to put on this list. And last but not least, I didn't want to just get stuck in the Rockies or the Intermountain West. We have a lot of great water to fish out here. There are a number of rivers that could have been on this list that are not, but I wanted to get a good spread across the US. Now, before we get too far into this list, I want to, again, thank you for being here, but if you wouldn't mind just liking this video and following this channel, it'd be a huge help. It takes a lot of time, effort, and yes, even money to bring these videos to you. We love doing them and we want to keep doing them. The more support we get from you, the more we can keep doing this, and it just perpetuates the thing. So go ahead and smash that like button. We really, really appreciate you. Now let's get on with this list. And like I said before, there's a lot of rivers that could have been included that we just can't, we don't have room for. Number one, maybe the Kenai River. Alaska's Kenai River is an unbelievably fishy place. Not only are you getting a lot of trout opportunity, you're getting a lot of char, you're getting a lot of salmon. It's inherently a fishy place. We can almost say that of course the Kenai is on there and we don't even need to talk about it. We just save some room for other rivers to be on this list. And I chose that Kenai just as an honorable mention because a lot of Alaskan rivers are a little bit remote. It's hard to get to, and the Kenai is not. It's really not. It's accessible. You can fish from shore. You can rent a boat or get a guide. It's pretty accessible, and there's a lot of really great freestone rivers too, especially like in western Montana where I used to work and where I used to live. We could talk about like the Bitterroot and the Blackfoot around Missoula. We got some really nice fishy freestones over there that, again, we'll put in that kind of honorable mention category. I'd love to include them on this list, but there are just too many great fishing storied rivers. Now, I just want to articulate that this is not in order. I could put these in order for my preferences. You would definitely argue against how I put these in order. It's a personal thing. So again, I'm not ordering these. These are just the top 10 places to fish in the US on the fly for trout. Starting at number 10, again, not ranked, is the White River in Arkansas. Series of tailwaters down there. Most of us know about the White River. A lot of us have been there. We're talking about Beaver Lake, Table Rock, or Bull Shoals. You got those dams creating these beautiful tailwater stretches with lots of access points and year-round fishing. Now, the White River can fish great any time of the year. It's got great hatches through the warm months. Of course, you've got that midge and blueing going on through the cold months. But we all know the White River in Arkansas for giant brown trout. We're talking record-breaking brown trout. You can get them on the dry, you can get them on the nymph, but you're probably going to want to fish some big streamers to get those big buck nasties. Number 9 on this not ranked list is going to be the Delaware River. I called and pulled a lot of friends who live east of the Mississippi and asked, what is your idea of the best trout river on the east side of the country, anywhere east of the Mississippi? And it came back so many times that the Delaware River was their choice. The Delaware River is awesome. It is not far from all these giant metropolis cities on the East Coast, short drive out from those cities on the New York and Pennsylvania border, and it is astoundingly beautiful. Beautiful rolling hills / mountains and beautiful wooded areas. It's a gorgeous river. It's teeming with fish. It is known for its wonderful hatches and dry fly fishing. There's great access points. You can walk with it, you can float it. You've got brown trout, rainbow trout, brook trout, and I know this is a trout list, but I'm going to include the smallmouth bass. Smallies on the fly are an absolute hoot, and you can get them out there in the Delaware as well. If you ask me, the Delaware is the epitome of East Coast fly fishing, and it deserves a place on this list. And since I haven't been so lucky as to make it to the Delaware yet, I had to rely on the good information from my friend Georgia, who lives out there on the East Coast and does a lot of fishing herself on the Delaware. So thank you, Georgia. Go check her out on Instagram at Georgia_SKUZA. Great information, great lady, and I really appreciate the help on that one. At number 8 on this list is the South Fork of the Snake. The Snake River South Fork is really kind of the main fork until the Henry's Fork meets it, and then we just call it the Snake. The South Fork of the Snake River is one of those places that is kind of known, but not really well known. The headwaters of the Snake River, or the South Fork of the Snake, are up in Wyoming, up above Jackson Hole, flows down into Jackson Reservoir, and then heads toward the Wyoming and Idaho border. Right at the border, you've got Palisades Dam, and the fishing section that most people refer to on the South Fork are from below Palisades Dam through Swan Valley, heading over to Idaho Falls, so on the Idaho side of things. This river's got your rainbows, it's got your browns, it's got this beautiful wild population of Yellowstone cutthroat as well. The scenery from Palisades Dam, especially through Swan Valley in this kind of canyony land, is unbelievable. And then you kind of come out into some flatter farmland the closer you get toward Idaho Falls. It's all beautiful, it's all very fishy, and it's all recommended. Now, access is there for sure. You're going to float through some private property, but boat is always the best way to access. There are tons of walk-in points or fishing accesses along the river as well. So the number of bugs on this river is wonderfully high. You can definitely nymph. Streamer fishing is definitely recommended. Really, the dry fly fishing on this river, in my opinion, is kind of underrated. It's known, but not well known, but it's definitely on this list. Now, number 7 on this list is going to be the South Platte, and that is in Colorado, of course. The South Platte River is famous for a reason. There's great rainbow brown cut. There's going to be the hybrid rainbow cutthroat as well in there, and it's just really, really beautiful, okay? It's not uncommon to expect to catch 15 to 20 inch plus fish on any given day. A lot of your fish are going to be at least that 12 to 15, 16 inch range. And then once you pass that 15 inch range, we're talking some really nice fish, okay? Anything, in my opinion, over 15 inches is a nice trout. 20 plus, definitely a daily possibility. Now, the headwaters of the South Platte are going to be a freestone situation, but as you come into the more well-known fishing areas, we're talking tailwaters, so below dams. We've got a few different sections that need to be noted here. So, of course, like I said, you've got that upper headwater section. You've got the Dream Stream. Who doesn't want to fish the Dream Stream? There's 11 Mile. You've got Cheeseman Canyon. You've got Waterton. So you've got these very storied sections of this beautiful, beautiful river chock full of fish. I even know people that fish down toward Denver. This river is known for its strong hatches. It's a year-round fishery. Of course, in the cold weather, you've got tons of midge and blue-wing olives. You've got all your caddis, you've got all your mayflies, you've got a great stonefly hatch, you've got great terrestrial fishing in the heat of the late summer and early fall. And then, of course, with all those tailwaters, you're going to get some good sow and scud action as well. Those nice big pieces of protein that those trout will key on. Next on the list is the Henry's Fork of the Snake. Most people just call it the Henry's Fork, and we're talking eastern Idaho, just outside of Yellowstone Park. Now, the Henry's Fork has two sources, the main one being Big Spring, just outside of Yellowstone, and also Henry's Lake. Those two come together into Island Park Dam, and most of the fishing on Henry's Fork of the Snake is going to be below dam, so just north of Island Park, all the way down through Island Park and beyond, and into, well, the open country, down all the way toward outside of Idaho Falls, where it meets the South Fork of the Snake. The most famous sections are Island Park Dam, and going downstream, we've got the Box Canyon, Last Chance, right through town, all the way down to Harriman Park. The Henry's Fork has awesome hatches as well. You're going to find a ton of year-round fishing in the area, but generally, of course, in the cold months, you're going to find your blue wings and your midge. Then as it warms up, you've got wonderful drake hatches. You've got some pretty big drakes that'll come up on this river. You've got great stonefly hatches if you're looking to fish the big bugs in the early summer. You've got tons of caddis. You've got tons of smaller mayflies. You've got tons of yellow sallies. So really, there's a wonderful offering for lots of dry fly fishing, nymphing, and streamer fishing as well. Access is great on this river. You can walk in a lot of different places. You can float this river very easily, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful fishy place to go. In the upper stretches, you'll find brook trout, and as you get lower, it's going to be predominantly rainbows, browns, and you've got those cutthroat mixed in throughout the river stretches as well. Next on the list is going to be the Green River in Utah. The Green River in Utah is a phenomenal trout fishery and a beautiful place to be in general. Now, the section of the Green we're talking about is coming out of Flaming Gorge Dam, and you've got three main sections of river to choose from. You've got the dam to Little Hole to Browns, and Browns to the border. Those are the three main sections that people talk about when they're fishing the Green River in Utah. Now, the upper sections are a little bit more heavy on the trout side of things. You've got great numbers of brown trout, rainbow trout, and cutthroat, with the numbers dwindling slowly as you go down to that lower section. The upper two sections can be quite busy sometimes, even with fun floaters, and that lower section tends to get a lot less attention. So you got to think about things that way too. Maybe fewer trout, but fewer boats, fewer fisher people, fewer floaters. That might entice you to get down away from the dam a little bit. However, the stretch right below the dam and heading downstream is very wade accessible, and that makes it such an attractive stream to most fly fisher people here in this country, or at least in the West. Easy access, great float fishing, great hatches as well, and it's just unbelievably beautiful. Now, this is another year-round fishery. We've got a dam that helps keep that water temperature steady and regulated even through the winter. You've got unbelievable hatches, you've got great nymphing, streamer fishing, and awesome terrestrial fishing as well. Moving on, I got to throw in my home waters of the Bighorn River in Montana and Wyoming. So there's your caveat. Now, I live in Idaho now, but I grew up in Billings fishing the Bighorn River as my home waters. The Bighorn River, for most people, means going to Fort Smith, Montana, and south central Montana near the Wyoming border, and fishing from Fort Smith below the dam and heading northeast toward the Yellowstone River. Now, this river is absolutely chock full of bugs. These are going to be smaller bugs too, because the base of this river, the bed is kind of that gravelly, cobbly, not really the big stones. Year-round tailwater fishery. You've got tons of midge in the winter, blue-wing olive on those shoulder seasons of the midge, even through the winter, because the water stays at that nice that nice steady temperature. You've got unbelievable nymphing opportunities, streamer fishing, even in the sunshine. Don't count out streamers in the sun on this river. Trout spay is also one of my favorite techniques on the Bighorn River as well. You're going to be pursuing mostly browns and rainbows. And there have been some pike and walleye that have kind of moved up river, more so in recent years. You might get tie into one of those as well. But talking about hatches one more time, if you know anything about trico hatches can be really frustrating. We're talking late summer, hot weather, low flows, barely moving, crystal clear water. You have to cast 70 feet out and drift for like 50 yards drag free just to get hopefully the timing of this fish to come up and take your little 22 dry fly. It can be really frustrating. But on the Bighorn, I've never seen such a friendly trico hatch. We're talking middle of the river, riffly water, pods of fish up. If you are a trico fisherman, I highly recommend getting down to the Bighorn to fish the trico hatch down there. Now, again, I said most people are talking about the Fort Smith, that Montana side of things, but you can't forget the Wyoming side of the Bighorn River. The Wyoming side of the Bighorn River is a phenomenal fishery. You're going to find fewer people, beautiful hatches, big fish, and coming out of the dam there just south of Thermopolis, Wyoming, you've got a lot of water to choose from. So I include that in this talk on the Bighorn River because it's really not that far of a drive once you're already in Montana. We're getting close to the end, folks, here. We've only got 3 more rivers to choose from. So where do you think we're going to go next? Well, in my humble opinion, which is not everybody's opinion, I need to include the Lamar River in Yellowstone Park. Now, the Lamar River is in that northeast section of Yellowstone Park, and it is an absolutely phenomenal fishery. This river is small enough to access on foot. And of course, I don't even think you can float it anyway, but foot access is phenomenal. It's an easily wadable river. It's chock full of cutthroat, and your chances of landing something 15 inches plus is absolutely a real thing all day, every day. There are some good sized fish in this smaller river. Now, this is one of those freestone rivers, and that means that the season on this river is kind of short. That's the downside. Now, you got to wait till the park opens, number one, and number two, you do get a lot of sediment loading in the runoff season, and the runoff season can last a little bit longer than other rivers on the Lamar. So that is unfortunate, but it is what it is, and it's really great because really that turbidity of the river is cleaning out all the silt and the gravel. It's keeping all those bugs alive and perpetuating themselves, and it makes this river a wonderful fishery for everybody. It's beautifully scenic. You're going to fish alongside bison. You're going to fish alongside elk sometimes. It's not uncommon to see wolves and grizzlies in this area too, so be prepared, be on the lookout, but it's really freaking cool. This river has some awesome hatches. It's got your standard maize, it's got your standard midge, but really, once the turbidity of the river drops out and you're able to start fishing in the summer, we're talking stone flies, we're talking some bigger drakes, and we're also talking terrestrials as we get later on into the summer. So dry fly fishing is awesome. Of course you can nymph. There's great undercut banks to nymph. There's great places to throw some streamers and dredge them out as well. The Lamar River in Yellowstone Park is definitely on my list. Now, you might think that I'm favoring my home state of Montana, and I might be a little bit, but I have a lot of experience out here, and we do have some really storied waters. This next one you've heard of, you might have fished, and it's the Missouri. The Missouri is on this list for so many reasons, it's hard to whittle it down. The Missouri that we're talking about is in the Helena to Great Falls stretch of the Missouri River. We've got 2 dams there. We've got Hauser and we've got Holter. And so we're talking tailwater sections that we're fishing. Most people are fishing Holter Dam down through Craig heading toward Great Falls. You got a long stretch of river there that holds a lot of really nice fish. Tons. I mean, the numbers are incredible up near the dam. Now, there is a section in between the 2 dams called the Land of the Giants. It's a little bit more difficult to access. There's maybe one access point on foot. You really need to have a boat to get in there, unfortunately. But if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. It's awesome. Now, down below toward Craig, below the second dam, there's plenty of fishing accesses. There's lots of boat ramps to drop your boat in. You can walk in and work the shores if you don't have a boat. It's a pretty accessible river, although it is quite large. So like I said, we're talking about another tailwater. It's a year-round fishery. In the cold weather, you've got your midge and blue wings, and I'm not joking when I say that this is probably the best winter dry fly fishery that I've ever been to. Unbelievable, huge pods of fish coming up in December, January, February. It's unbelievable. Of course, we go into the standard hatches. Not a lot of huge bugs. It is a tailwater. We're still talking like your caddis. You got your smaller mayflies like PMDs. You've got lots of yellow Sally stones. You don't really see any of the big stones. You might see a few as you get down away from the dam, but there's not really a number of big stones. Trout spay on this river is also phenomenal, usually in the fall, winter, and spring, but I have not seen a river other than maybe the Bighorn, my home river, the Bighorn, where trout spay is as effective as it is on the Missouri River. If you're having trouble figuring out what exactly they're eating, or there's so many bugs, let's be honest, they can get as picky as to what stage of life, what size, if your olive is too dark or too light, they can get extremely picky. If you're not catching anything or you don't see a lot of hatchers, you can always go with some scuds and sow bugs. There's a ton of them in this river, and that's again why these fish get fed and buff. Now, there can be a lot of traffic on this river, but it's a wide river channel. It's somewhat deep. It's big enough to handle the traffic, and well, it's the Missouri. It's fishy, and it should be on your list. It's on mine. And last but not least, it could actually be the highest ranked #1 fishing river for trout on the fly in the country. I don't know, we can make arguments for it, but we're going to talk about the Deschutes River in Oregon. And most people think of Oregon for, say, steelhead, but the Deschutes River is an unbelievable trout fishery. So the Deschutes starts way up in the mountains south of Bend, Oregon, and Little Lava Lake, flows up right through Bend and then heads toward the Columbia River. That upper section above Bend and to Bend is more of a freestone section. Then you're going to go through a series of 3 dams after that, heading toward the Columbia. Downstream, north of Bend, is really the more storied place to go fly fishing. Those tailwater sections of the Deschutes are phenomenal. Not only are the hatches unbelievable, you've got a beautiful series of hatches. You've got your typical midge, mayfly, caddis stuff. You've got an unbelievable stonefly hatch on this river, even though it is a tailwater. There are tons of wild trout in the Deschutes, including that native red band rainbow. Awesome, awesome fish. And who doesn't like targeting steelhead as well? There's a great number of steelhead that return to this river all the time, and it's on my list for those reasons and a few more, which are, well, the awesome dry fly action. It's just hard to beat. There's great dry fly fishing on this river. You can even do the skating technique, the topwater technique, to catch your summer steelhead, and it's a beautiful, beautiful. So we're talking about tailwaters, but you get kind of a freestone feel to it as well, where you've got some bigger rocks. There's really cool canyon lands, these awesome big hills, and it's just a very kind of a unique river, and the fishing is great. Nymphing, dry fly, streamer, whatever you have to do, but like I said, dry fly, this river is a standout. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that list on the top 10 fly fishing rivers for trout pursuits in the United States. I sure did. Again, it's a subjective list. There are arguments for and against some of these rivers that are on it. It's something that I chose and I feel strongly about. At least right now, we could have a civilized conversation and maybe pull 1 or 2 off and put some others on at another point. But as is, here we are. Those are my 10, and I think you'll agree with most of them. One more time, if you don't mind, like this video, follow us on this channel. We really appreciate it. We do a lot of work to get these videos to you, and it really helps us out in a big way, more than you can imagine. So thank you very much for that. Once again, this is Into Fly Fishing. I'm Nick Jovanovich, and we'll see you out here again next time. Take care.